Hey guys, this is Nod Lammers of Invoked 101, and I'm doing a little something different, as you guys can probably tell. I'm using the microphone for the audio this time. I got my face cam using my phone, and I got some new settings I'm trying out on the blue camera for this main stuff right here, and hopefully that turns out better. I'm trying to see if the frame rate will improve, and it looks like it is on its viewfinder, so it looks good on the viewfinder. So hopefully that'll increase for you guys as well. But you can see I have four very different decks in front of me, and I kind of want to talk about my Yu-Gi-Oh story, the how I got to where I am today, because something very strange happened recently. It was a really deja vu moment of something I consider to be a bit of a turning point in my Yu-Gi-Oh career, I guess. And I guess I kind of wanted to just sit down and talk about everything up till about the channel started, because after the channel started, you guys kind of followed me since then. Like all my big events, the regionals, the YCS, all that is on the channel if you want to look at that. But there's a lot of like beforehand that I have talked about and whatnot. And yeah, so I guess we'll start. I don't want to start too far back, because like everyone had cards as a kid, so I'll just kind of like summarize up what I did, and we'll go from there till about the start of the channel. So yeah, I'm excited to tell you guys the story. I'm gonna put the intro. I kind of want to do this video a little different, so I'll let the intro roll, and then we'll come back after that. So, as a kid, I did have cards. I feel like everyone had cards. So I remember being like 4. This was when I was still living in Iowa. So I was really young. I had cards, and I think I had them probably up until about 3rd or 4th grade, because around that time, that's when Pokemon became big. So I stopped doing Yu-Gi-Oh. I didn't know that like Yu-Gi-Oh was a game. I watched the show, I knew I liked the show, and I had the cards. That was about it. You can see, yeah, my thing in the background, my voice recorder. But yeah, I had cards, and I had like a bunch of Destiny Hero stuff. It was around GX, so it was around that time. And yeah, that's kind of it. Like after Pokemon, I kind of like after the Pokemon stuff, I really put all my cards away. I didn't really mess with them. But then, come freshman year of high school, we had a class called Seminar, and that's kind of like a study hall type class. And that's when I met one of my friends. His name is Drew, and he had cards, and he was playing against someone else in our Seminar class. And I was like, "Oh my god, you guys are playing Yu-Gi-Oh!" And he goes, "Yeah." He's like, "Do you play?" And I was like, "Well, I have cards, but it's been a while." So I brought some cards in the next time, and he helped me put something together. And just over time, I believe the first deck he helped me build was spellbooks. I remember having like a full-on spellbook deck with judgments and everything. It was really cool. And he helped me put that together. And I remember going in one day and him going like, and he basically built the deck for me, just like out of the stuff that I had. And I remember going in and I activated like Judgment, and he's like, "You can't." And I was like, "Why?" And he's like, "That card's banned." And I was like, "Oh, I don't want to play anymore." So I stopped playing spellbooks. And it was around that same time that my best friend Devin, who I've mentioned a couple times on the channel, I don't know if he's exactly been on it. He hasn't been on it too recently, simply because he's active duty. So it's been a while. I remember going over to his place, and I remember he asked me to grab something out of his closet. There was something in his closet, and I was like, "Oh, I'll grab it." I remember seeing a box of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I was like, "You play?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's like a kinda." And I remember it was kind of like a secret or whatever. I remember it kind of being like one of those moments, like, "Oh no." And it was at that point that he and I decided we were both gonna play the game together. And that's when I first built a Cyber Dragon deck. That's when I did my first build of it. It was mainly built to summon Cyber Laser Dragon, and it didn't have cores or anything, which is kind of crazy. But that's when I first built Cyber Dragons, and that really is a deck that defined throughout my high school time. That's really one of those decks that just like is what I played. And like I remember going through high school, I had, I guess, like mentors per se, like Yu-Gi-Oh mentors. And Devin wasn't necessarily one of those. He definitely helped me like catch up on the rules and stuff, but he became more of like a rival per se. Like we always wanted to see each other succeed, but we also always wanted to beat each other. It was awesome, and it's amazing. Like I love seeing Devin. When he came up here, I actually got to see him over the winter, and he ended up leaving a bunch of his bulk here because he didn't have anywhere to put it. So I actually have a bunch of his stuff right now. But yeah, and he helped me build my first Cyber Dragon deck. He helped me put that together, and it's really the basis of where all this stuff comes from. And I remember shortly after I started playing this and looking into stuff, that Gorov, if you remember my latest community post, he actually hooked me up with a bunch of the first stuff from this. I'm pretty sure what he did was he just had the Cyber Structure deck, and he just traded me all the new stuff from it. Because that's where I got my first Repair Plant, my first Core, my first Dry, and Flash Fusion, Cyber Twin, and Nova. I think I got all those from him. And he's going to come up a few times because he also helped me out with this one back when I was putting this together. But yeah, and it was kind of crazy to build Cyber Dragons. And it was around the time that I had really gotten comfortable playing Cyber Dragons that I met James, because that was about sophomore year, and that's when I started going a little harder into Yu-Gi-Oh. Like I didn't just have Cyber Dragons, I had a couple other decks, and I met a few other people. Alex showed us how to do pendulum summoning, because none of us knew how that worked, and he was like, oh, I'll figure it out, and he figured it out and told us how to do it, because we were idiots and we didn't know you could just look this stuff up online. I don't know why we didn't think about that, but after I met James, he definitely became one of my mentors, and he's like a brother to me now. James has been, I think he's been on the channel a couple times. He was in, I think the latest time was the Blackwing Dogmatica deck profile, which he got 66th at a extravaganza at the qualifiers for an extravaganza. So if you want to see that, you can check that video out. And he kind of pushed me to play a variance of different decks, to just kind of spread and play whatever. And he pushed me to do, because I was kind of comfortable just being like, oh no, I'll just play Cyber Dragons with the fusions, because I didn't really know how like Xyz monsters worked or Synchro monsters or anything like that, because I didn't care. I was like, oh yeah, I'll just stick with the fusion monsters. I know what Nova does, I know how to make that, and I think I don't remember if I had Infinity at this point or not, yeah. And he was like, well, you should build a Synchro deck. You should do something with Synchros. And I was like, okay. So I had recently opened up like 5 packs of high-speed riders, and I had Speedroids and stuff. And I was like, well, I know what Vehicroids are, so I'll build Speedroids. And I love Speedroids so much. It's hard to talk about Speedroids without thinking of all the crazy things and all the wonderful moments I've had with the deck. Like all 4 of these decks are just amazing. And but Speedroids, I remember putting the deck together. I didn't have any red-eyed dice. I didn't have Terratop. I had tri-eyed dice and double yo-yo and stuff like that, all the commons essentially. And I remember going to Joplin. They have a store there called Vintage Stock, and it's huge. It's like it's the biggest one like in the area that I can get to. And they had all the Speedroid stuff there for 50 cents. They had 50-cent Terratops, Tectombergs, Speed Recoveries, Red-Eyed Dice. I remember I spent like $6. So that was like 12 cards. And that finished out my Speedroid deck. I got 3 Red-Eyed Dice, Tectombergs, Terratops, Speed Recoveries, a couple other things. And I almost bought a Ghost Rare Clearwing, but I did not buy a Ghost Rare Clearwing because I was broke. And it was like $20. And he had it listed for like $2. And I was like, oh yeah, I want that. And then it was actually supposed to be 20. But anyways, and I remember I got back, and this is around the time Shining Victory started coming out, and Devin was looking for all the Blue Eye stuff. And I remember a big moment, and I feel like this is a really big moment in my Yu-Gi-Oh career, because this really, I had just picked up the Speedroid stuff, and another thing was about to happen when I got it. And I got this from James, and I kind of want to talk about it. This is my first Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, the first one I ever got. This is a Shining Victories first ed. I remember that we would go to Walmart in the morning, and we would just like buy out all the Shining Victories because Devin was offering like big money for Blue Eyes Alternative, which we thought was in Shining Victories. We didn't know it was in the movie pack. But yeah, I remember James pulled this, and I was like, that's a Speedroid card. I had remembered seeing people talk about a Crystal Wing monster for Speedroids, and I thought it was a Crystal Beast Synchro monster, and I was like, oh. So I was like, yo, let me get that off you. So I traded him some cards for it, and I got what would become my favorite monster. And it became my favorite card in the whole game very quickly, simply because of how powerful it was when I combined it with Speedroids and actually utilized it. Speaking of Speedroids, this is where Gorov kind of comes up again. He hooked me up with my first Tectomberg, at least. I don't know if he gave me my first Terratop. And then he also hooked me up with my first Chambara. So that was really cool. So, you know, Gorov kind of came up with these first couple decks because, you know, we were going to high school together. But yeah, and oh man, it was nuts. I remember just like going to school in the morning, like early in the morning, and playing Speedroids. And, you know, it's just one of those decks that I just, even today, I'm still like, oh my gosh. And, you know, especially since it doesn't help that this deck is designed to spit out Crystal Wing as quick as possible. And then Crystal Wing is my favorite, like, card in the whole game. So, like, yeah, nuts. Another deck that can spit out Crystal Wing is DDs. And this is, once I started getting, you know, I'd kind of caught up to James. This was my later years in high school, probably senior. This was about senior year. And I built DDs around the time I started going to locals. Is when the structure deck came out. And so I was playing DDs at the time, and I was just wrecking shop at high school. I was doing okay at locals with it because I had finally started going to a locals and learning there. And I had met a guy named Seth at high school, and he was my next Yu-Gi-Oh mentor, I would say. And he helped me trick out the Cyber Dragon deck. He showed me the video of the French guy who would Ghost Ogre his own core to search the Kaiju and Galaxy Soldier and stuff off the repair plant. He showed me that video. Which also introduced me to the Star Destroyer Kaiju in Cyber Dragons. So like I kind of flipped back and forth between Cyber Dragons and DDDs for a little bit. But I remember I took Cyber Dragons to my first ever locals, and because like I thought it was so bad, I was like, oh yeah, Cyber Dragons are so good. And then I just got floored with it, and I put Cyber Dragons down for probably a year. I didn't touch this deck for like a year. And so I picked up a bunch of different stuff. I played different things, but I really settled on DDD, and that's where I kind of picked up everything. And I remember just playing this, and it got to the point where my friends at high school didn't want to play against DDD. Like they would not play against me if I was playing DDD. And it's just because this deck was so good. It was so strong. But, like, I'd take it to locals. And, you know, Zoo was a thing there. So it became even more difficult to play this. It was a really sad time because I felt like I couldn't play this. Now, I remember in between... It was before Maximum Crisis came out. But Zoo had come out. And this is when I was really cracking down at locals, because Seth kind of stopped being one of my Yu-Gi-Oh mentors very quickly because I kind of caught up to him. I felt like I learned a lot from him very quickly and kind of surpassed him. Like I didn't keep what I perceive as like one of my Yu-Gi-Oh mentors. I didn't keep those guys for very long as a mentor because I quickly surpassed them in the game. I felt with Speedroids. Hang on. When I started going to locals, that's kind of became like the finality, was like the local level for me to a degree. And I remember that's where I learned like side decking and stuff and picked up more of the ruling aspect, and that's definitely where I kind of came into my own stride, is when I started going there. And I graduated high school at 17. So I was a pretty young guy. I was one of the youngest guys at the locals. And I remember when Zoo had first come out, I was like, DDD can't stack up to that. Dryden's too strong. And I remember picking Speedroids, like I remember playing Speedroids one day just kind of like to play it, and Clearwing and Crystal Wing ended up being super strong against Trident and also pretty strong against ABC Buster Dragon, which was the other big threat at the time. Because Clearwing prevented targeting in the main phase, and Clearwing was a negate, and Crystal Wing was a negate. So it was really cool to just summon both of those. I only had one crystal still. I still only had this one Crystal Wing, but this thing carried me through the entire zoo format. And because of that choice, because I was just like, oh, and then I figured out like I side deck stuff specifically to harm zoo decks and ABC decks and stuff. Because of that, I was started to get first occasionally at locals, and I would get second and third more consistently. But still, I was going 4 or 5 rounds XO X1 with Speedroids and zoo format. It was really cool. And there's a couple videos on the channel about that around that time. But around that time, I was also building something in the background. I was building my Invoke deck in the background. Fusion Forces had definitely come out, and I just really wanted to play Invoked. I don't know what it was about it, but something about it spoke to me. And I remember, like, it got to the point where I was telling my friends, because I was the only one who had Solemn Strikes. I had like 6 Mega Pack Solemn Strikes, and none of my friends had any. And Solemn Strike was less value at the time than Invocation. It is now too, but it was a super strong card in our little group format. And I remember telling all the guys, I was like, "Hey, if you have an Invocation, I'll swap you a Solemn Strike for it," because I knew how valuable it was to those guys. And I remember my girlfriend, Mio, who was still my girlfriend at the time. She was also my girlfriend during a lot of this, a lot of this happening. Definitely when I was playing DDDs to a degree, we were kind of on and off in high school, and but when I was building Invoked, that's when we kind of like we've been together like since that time to now. And I remember she surprised me. She texted me and she's like, "Hey, I got you an Invocation." And she got it for she actually ended up getting it for a really good price. She told me she got it for like $25 when it was like 33 or something like that. It was a really good deal. She got it for way less than market. Not way less, but definitely less than market. And I still have it. It's put away in one of the binders. So I remember going over there. I got there super fast, and I swapped her the Solemn Strike, which ended up being her first card for the Invocation. And I remember, I think I took this to locals once with the one Invocation, and I don't remember doing amazing, but I remember doing well. And then Master Rule 4 hit, and you can see this on the channel. You can see the invoked profiles I was putting out, because the structure deck came out whenever that hit. The Decode Talker starter deck, and I combined Winwich invoked Kaiju with the Cyber stuff, and it was a pretty okay little deck for what it was. I mean, it was still basically just an invoke deck, but then I could also make Decode Talker to make multiple fusions and stuff like that, and it was pretty fun. And you know, Invoked Winwich Artifact is another deck that can summon Crystal Wing. So you can see the only deck on this table that couldn't summon Crystal Wing was Cyber Dragons. And I guess Invoke doesn't really summon it anymore now. But I'm trying to put this theme here, that this Crystal Wing specifically, this one, this isn't in my deck anymore. It's not in my deck anymore because I've retired it. Because it's definitely served its value. I also have multiple other ones. But you can see I got it here. And then, like, just throughout time, with the Winwitches, it came with me up until it went back into Speedroids for a little bit and then was retired once I got more. But yeah, and you can see the profiles on the channel of these other Invoke decks that I was playing at the time. And I was doing pretty well with it. And then, you know, then the Mech Knights came out, and I remember, well, technically Vendreads came out, and then that's when I switched the channel name to Invoked 101, and started doing that stuff, and started doing what you guys have seen since. And you can see I picked up the Mech Knights. Like, ever since then, you guys have been following me through the channel. And like I said, I really feel like a big event for me was getting this Crystal Wing. Because after I got this Crystal Wing, that's when I buckled down with Speedroids, and I started going to locals more, and I figured out Cyber Dragons more. And that's around this time I got the Crystal Wing. We figured out that TCG Player existed, that cards had more than just trade value to me. Like, they had actual monetary value. That's around the time we figured that out, which was kind of funny because just how it was. And it's really crazy. And the reason I bring that up is because, like I mentioned earlier, something happened recently that was very deja vu moment. As you guys know, Ghost from the Past came out, and it does have a Ghost Rare Crystal Wing in it. And if you follow Angel of Alchemy on Instagram, you'll know something. But I haven't really posted it except in a very select spot, and that's our locals got Ghost from the Past on Wednesday. This is probably going up on Saturday, so they got it on Wednesday, and Wednesday evening our group chat exploded because same James from this one, pulled a Ghost Rare Crystal Wing. And like I said, we've been friends since high school. So I immediately messaged him and I'm like, oh, what do you want for it? And he's like, oh, I don't know if I'm getting rid of it. And I was like, okay. It made sense. I was like, okay. He got rid of one Crystal Wing to me. He doesn't want to get rid of the other one to me. And I was like, all right, fair. But then I got a message from him. He's like, okay, I'm coming over. And I was like, okay. So he comes over and he sits down with me and we talk, and he hands me the Ghost Rare Crystal Wing. It's such a strange thing to get the same card in a very similar way from the same person. It's not often that repeat happens. And I want to make a weird point here that, like, at the time of recording, we're on the verge of getting the reveals for the new Speedroid cards. This has just come out, and it really feels like a lot of things are lining up Yu-Gi-Oh wise for me. It's very strange. So I just kind of wanted to talk about something since, and you can see it. There it is. There's the Ghost Rare right there. So I just kind of wanted to talk about, like, how odd it is that these things have lined up and kind of in this moment in time come full circle. Because I don't know what it is. I don't know totally how to put it into words, but, like, I feel like things are lining right up for a success, which is really strange. And I don't know what that means totally. So I just kind of wanted to sit down and talk about where we are Yu-Gi-Oh wise. And like I said, I know I kind of cut it like here in terms of the timeline, but like I said, you guys have followed me since I started playing Invoked, essentially. All that stuff, all the big events, the YCS, the regionals, all that are on the channel, and they all have their own playlists, and you can see all the various decks I've picked up throughout this time. But yeah, I kind of just wanted to sit down and I wanted to talk about this weird occurrence that happened with this and kind of how I got here. So this doesn't really have a point, just me chattering. And yeah, I think that's really all I have to say about that. As usual, if you feel like supporting the channel, there's links in the description. We do have stickers. There's our stickers. Wonderful. So if you feel like checking those out, go for it. With all that said, man, that's it. Thanks for watching.